The Lord is God of heaven. First and foremost, we need to know who the God of heaven is, since everything else depends on this. Throughout the whole of heaven, no one is acknowledged as God of heaven except the Lord. Angels say what he himself taught, namely, that he is one with the Father, that the Father is in him, and he in the Father, that anyone who sees him sees the Father, and that everything holy emanates from him. I have often talked with angels about this, and their consistent testimony has been that in heaven they cannot divide the divine into three, because they both know and perceive that the divine is one and that this one is in the Lord. They have also told me that when people arrive from earth with the idea of three divine beings, they cannot be admitted to heaven. This is because their thinking vacillates between one opinion and the other, and in heaven they are not allowed to think three and say one. In heaven, people actually speak directly from their thoughts, so that we have a kind of thoughtful speech or audible thought. This means that if people have divided the divine into three in the world and held a separate image of each one without gathering and focusing these three into one, they cannot be accepted. In heaven, there is a communication of all thoughts. So if people arrive who think three and say one, they are recognized immediately for what they are and are sent away. Still, it needs to be realized that in the other life, any people who have not put good in one compartment and true in another, who have not separated faith from love, accept the heavenly concept of the Lord as God of the universe once they have been taught. It is different, though, with people who have separated their faith from their lives, that is, who have not lived by the guiding principles of true faith. On the other hand, people who have denied the Lord's divine nature and have recognized only his human nature, like the Socinians, are also excluded from heaven. They are taken a little way forward to the right and are let down into the depths, which completely separates them from the Christian realm. Then, too, there are people who claim to believe in an invisible divine, called the being of the universe, and reject any faith in the Lord. When they are examined, it turns out that they do not believe in any God at all, since this invisible divine of theirs is actually like the first principles of nature. This is incompatible with faith and love, because it eludes actual thought. These people are banished to the company of those called materialists. All little children, and these make up a third part of heaven, are led first into an acknowledgement and belief that the Lord is their Father. Later they are brought into an acknowledgement and belief that he is Lord of all, which means God of heaven and earth. It will be made clear below that little children mature in heaven, and by means of insights are brought into full angelic intelligence and wisdom. There can be no doubt among church people that the Lord is God of heaven, because he himself teaches that everything of the Father belongs to him. Matthew 11:27, John 16:15, 17:2, and that he has all power in heaven and on earth, Matthew 28:18. It says in heaven and on earth because the ruler of heaven rules earth as well, the one actually depending on the other. His ruling heaven and earth means our accepting from him everything good that is intrinsic to love and everything true that is intrinsic to faith. It therefore means accepting all intelligence and wisdom, and thus all happiness. In short, eternal life. This too the Lord teaches when he says, "Whoever believes in the Son has eternal life, but whoever does not trust the Son will not see life." John 3:36. Or again, he says, "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, even though he dies, will be alive, and whoever lives and believes in me will not die to eternity." John 11:25-26. Or again, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." John 14:6. It is the Lord's divine nature that makes heaven. While we call the total assemblage of angels heaven because they do make it up, what really makes heaven overall and in every specific instance is the divine nature that emanates from the Lord, flowing into angels and accepted by them. The divine nature that emanates from the Lord is the good intrinsic to love and the truth intrinsic to faith. The amount angels accept from the Lord of what is good and what is true determines the extent to which they are angels and are in heaven. Everyone in the heavens knows, believes, and even perceives that nothing good is intended and done by the self, and that nothing true is thought and believed by the self. Everything comes from the divine, which means from the Lord. Anything good and true from the self is not good or true, because there is no life from the divine within it. Angels of the central heaven perceive and feel the inflow distinctly. The more they accept, the more they seem to be in heaven, because they are more fully absorbed in love and faith, in the light of intelligence and wisdom, and in the heavenly joy that results. Once we see that all these qualities emanate from the Lord's divine nature, we can see that the Lord's divine nature makes heaven. They say that it is not just everything good and true that comes from the Lord, but every bit of life as well. They support this by pointing out that nothing can come into being from itself. Everything presupposes something prior. This means that everything has come into being from a first, which they call the essential reality of the life of everything. Everything endures in the same way too, because enduring is a constant coming into being. If anything were not kept in constant connection with the first, through intermediate means, it would instantly collapse and disintegrate. They add that there is only one single wellspring of life, with human life as one stream flowing from it. If it were not constantly supplied from its wellspring, it would immediately peter out. Still further, they say that nothing flows from that unique wellspring of life, the Lord, that is not divinely good and divinely true. These affect every individual according to the way they are accepted. The Lord's divine nature in heaven is love for him and thoughtfulness toward one's neighbor. In heaven, the divine nature that emanates from the Lord is called divine truth, for reasons that will be given below. This divine truth flows into heaven from the Lord, out of his divine love. Divine love and the divine truth that derives from it are like the sun's fire and the light that comes from it in our world. Love is like the sun's fire, and the derivative truth is like the light from the sun. By reason of correspondence, fire means love, and light means the truth that flows from it. This enables us to determine the character of the divine truth that emanates from divine love. In its essence, it is divine good united to divine truth, and because it is united, it gives life to everything in heaven. The way the warmth of the sun, united to its light, makes everything fruitful on earth in spring and summer. It is different when the warmth is not united to light, when the light is therefore cold. Then everything slows down and lies there, snuffed out. The divine good we have compared to warmth is the good of love within and among angels. And the divine truth we have compared to light is the means and the source of this good of love. The reason the divine in heaven, which in fact makes heaven, is love, is that love is spiritual union. It unites angels to the Lord and unites them with each other. It does this so thoroughly that in the Lord's sight they are like a single being. Further, love is the essential reality of every individual life. It is therefore the source of the life of angels and the life of people here. Anyone who weighs the matter will discover that love is our vital core. We grow warm because of its presence, and cold because of its absence. And when it is completely gone, we die. We do need to realize, though, that it is the quality of our love that determines the quality of this life. There are two quite distinguishable loves in heaven: love for the Lord and love for our neighbor. Love for the Lord is characteristic of the third or central heaven, while love for our neighbor is characteristic of the second or intermediate heaven. Both come from the Lord, and each one makes a heaven. In heaven's light, it is easy to see how these two loves differ and how they unite, but this can be seen only dimly in our world. In heaven, loving the Lord does not mean loving him for the image he projects, but loving the good that comes from him. Loving the good is intending and doing it from love. Further, loving one's neighbor does not mean loving companions for the images they project, but loving the truth that comes from the Word. Loving the truth is intending and doing it. We can therefore see that these two loves differ the way good and true differ, and unite the way these two unite. The reason the Lord's divine nature in heaven is love is that love is receptive to every heavenly quality, that is of peace, intelligence, wisdom, and happiness. Love is receptive to everything that is in harmony with it. It longs for such things. It seeks them out. It absorbs them spontaneously because it has the constant purpose of uniting itself with them and being enriched by them. People actually recognize this fact, since the love within them surveys memory, so to speak, and draws out of it the items that agree with it. It gathers these together and arranges them within and beneath itself, so that it may possess them, and beneath itself, so that they may serve it. It discards and eradicates, though, the items that do not agree with it. I have been able to see very clearly that love has a full, intrinsic ability to accept elements of truth that suit it, and has also a desire of uniting them to itself. This has become clear from watching people who have been transported into heaven. Even those who were simple people in this world have arrived at angelic wisdom and heavenly happiness in the company of angels. This was because they loved what is good and true for the sake of what is good and true. They had grafted these qualities into their lives and had thereby become capable of accepting heaven and all its indescribable riches. People caught up in love for themselves and for the world, however, have no such receptive ability. They turn away from such things, discard them, and at their first touch or inflow try to escape them. They ally themselves with people in hell who are caught up in loves like their own. There were some spirits who doubted that love was so full and wanted to know whether this was really true. In order that they might find out, they were let into a state of heavenly love with all obstacles removed and were brought forward a considerable distance to an angelic heaven. They talked with me from there and told me that they felt deeper happiness than words could express, sorrowing that they would have to return to their former state. Other people as well have been raised into heaven, and the deeper or higher they have been taken, the deeper and higher they have penetrated into intelligence and wisdom, becoming able to grasp things that were incomprehensible to them before. We can see from this that the love that emanates from the Lord is open to heaven and all its riches. We can conclude that love for the Lord and love for our neighbor embrace within themselves everything that is true from the divine, because this follows from what the Lord himself said about these two loves. You shall love your God with all your heart and with all your soul. This is the greatest and first commandment. The second, which is like it, is that you should love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend the law and the prophets. Matthew 22:37-40. The law and the prophets are the whole word, which means all divine truth.